Okay, my name is Aubrey Popple, and this is my acceptable use policy modifications that I made to the existing acceptable use policy for Dalton Public Schools here in Dalton, Georgia. It's a pretty good acceptable use policy that we have in place already as I read through it and kind of looked back at the article that we read this week. It kind of read a little bit more like a list of things that you shouldn't do. So I went ahead and included things that I think that probably should be done. I'm not saying that we don't do those things already because my district is pretty good as we've accepted technology in a pretty heavy manner within the district. We are one-to-one with all our students, and the latest and greatest technology is always available if teachers would like to request it. My district is pretty good, and my technology staff is really good about doing what they can to make sure that we get everything we need. So what I did include was some of the things that I think that teachers should do, because oftentimes these are things that I've, working with some of our tech department and on some of the district teams I've been part of, these are things that we've encountered that maybe should have been outlined from the beginning. And so I think that adding this in really would help eliminate some of those having to go back and deal with at a later time and date. So the very first thing I added in right here was that users should follow guidelines and proper digital citizenship requirements. So those are what I've added in, is some digital citizenship requirements for both our students and our staff, more so for students. So let me scroll down here to some of my modifications here. We do provide internet. Like I said, we have a one-to-one for all of our students. So they're all on Lenovo ThinkPads, and I think we're switching to Dells now. So they're all on devices from grades 3 through 12, and they get new device refreshes every few years. So they do have access to take those home starting in 3rd grade. At the younger levels, at pre-K through 2, we do have classroom sets of iPads in the lower level, and then I think laptop carts in maybe 2nd grade to get them ready to have devices in 3rd grade. So because technology is integrated from the very beginning, digital citizenship really should be a part of the curriculum as well. And so I first added in that students must participate in digital citizenship modules or training that is provided by the staff. At a minimum, annual training is provided. So technology is so integrated nowadays into all parts of life, but we don't always teach kids how to use it properly. It's kind of assumed that maybe their parents did, but we can't make that assumption. So we have to make sure that we are doing our part to make sure that we're training kids properly. So at least a minimum of annual training, and that's based on per level and exposure of what technology is going to be used, or social media platforms, or anything that's going to be used. We're very fortunate in our district that we use Canvas. And so Canvas has a lot of already great LTIs, which are learning tools that are integrated into the program. So outside social media sources are not really necessary, I feel, to use. I know a lot of districts do use like class Facebook pages and groups, or have a class Instagram or whatever, but there's just too much at stake and too much risk that could be there with some of that. And there's so many tools, like I said, that Canvas offers, that it makes more sense to just use the platform that we have and to teach our kids and parents and staff really how to use that properly, so that we're not having, higher risk on outside platforms and duplicating really technology. When using a new technology, so the second thing I changed or added in was when using a new technology or platform, students will participate in proper media review and training with either a teacher, media specialist, and or a tech support personnel prior to that use. So if a teacher is going to introduce a new program or add in a class Facebook page or something, that student needs to be, before they're allowed to use that, especially on a school device, they need to be taught the digital citizenship and how to properly use that and what's acceptable and what's not, so that they know before posting anything or accepting anything or participating in anything, how to use that properly and how to communicate properly with the staff or the other students that are going to be on that platform as well. The biggest thing is we just want to make sure that the kids are protected, and that they are really using these to the best of their abilities and what the program's actually used for. Staff on the same side is going to participate in a minimum annual training and review of the district acceptable use policy. It is part of our annual staff ethics training that we do every year in the fall, to go back through and review it. However, people get a little complacent, and so adding some things in, especially when you're modifying or changing anything, or we add a new technology resource to the district, if we're doing that training on that new technology when we're doing our ethics review in the fall, it just takes out some of the lag, and maybe it'll help teachers want to use that new technology or that new resource or that new platform earlier in the year, rather than figuring out, in the spring that, oh, we've had access to this the whole time. And then staff must consult technology department prior to introducing any new technology tool or social media platform for any use in district activities. So this goes for coaches, parapros, teachers, staff meetings, etc. I think we're seeing this, we had to have a huge with schools being shut down, there was a very quick and very important staff meeting for how to use Zoom properly. And that was something that integrates into Canvas, which is great because it gives us an extra layer of protection. But, in a traditional classroom, there was never a need for Zoom before, really, because we didn't have to do a whole lot of not face-to-face meeting. We had a lot of face-to-face time with kids, so there wasn't a need for that. But the fact that we're now working from home, kids need that face-to-face contact, and we need to make sure that any of those conversations, you're hearing in media today that there's Zoom bombings where people are hacking in and showing inappropriate things or posting inappropriate things or participating in meetings that they're not supposed to be a part of. So that cannot happen when you're dealing with children, and trying to keep them safe on those platforms. So anytime there's new technology used. So that's on one side of it. The other side of it is that, there's budgets that are set up, and a lot of times, on the backside of this that teachers don't always think about is that, sometimes we have site licenses for certain platforms or programs, and sometimes we just have a seat count that we can do. So it just depends on what's most financially efficient for the district as to what they buy. And as part of a team that I was on, we realized that there were multiple, especially elementary schools, that were paying for, multiples of them had their own site licenses for certain things. Well, if those hadn't been purchased by the principals, not through the technology department, if the technology department had done it and had known about it, really, then they could have bought a district license and it would have saved thousands and thousands of dollars for the district. So now that those technology, the tech department is aware that that was happening, then they were able to go ahead and modify those contracts. But, if there had been a piece in the acceptable use policy from the beginning that you must consult the tech department, that would have been something that, that wouldn't have been an oversight that we would have waited for and found at the end. Other than that, the existing acceptable use kind of outlines things that you shouldn't do, that you shouldn't ever share your password, that you should be polite, that you should use acceptable language, that communication isn't always private. I think all of our students know that that the technology department can see every keystroke that they make, and they know that the teachers, through Canvas, can see the last time they logged on and logged off, how much time they spent on each page. So there's some accountability in there, but there's also, there's there needs to be that training from the beginning that everything has a digital footprint, and it's all being recorded. And the last part of this acceptable use policy that is in place already from my district is that basically that there's no guarantee or coverage completely 100% by the district. So we are fortunate that most of our devices, especially all of our newer devices, have a warranty on them, and we can send them out to be replaced or repaired. But when the students accept their devices one-to-one, they're held accountable for that. So if they lose it, they have to pay to replace it. And that's a harsh financial burden for a lot of kids, it's a lot of our families, really. But it's, it's that the computers have replaced a lot of classroom textbooks. A lot of our resources are all digital now. And so that money, instead of buying, 7 textbooks for the kids that they would be responsible for, which pretty much total up to the same amount as one computer if they lost all of those. So making sure that students understand that the system is not always responsible for this, and that this technology and the use of that technology, the proper use of that technology, really falls on that student, and same for the staff. And I do appreciate that the last part. So every time that you log onto your school device, you're basically accepting the internet usage policy or the acceptable use policy. So every time you log in and click OK, you are saying that you're going to follow these guidelines. And so I'm not sure if every student knows that, and that's probably something that needs to go into that initial digital citizenship, that, hey guys, every time you log into your computer, you are saying that I agree to do these things. So that is something that, a lot of times people just click and go and don't always think about what that really means. And so we've got to get better at making sure that we talk about the things that you should do, not just the things that you shouldn't do.